गुरुरेव गतिर्गुरुमेव भजे गुरुनैव सहास्मि नमो गुरवे न गुरुः परमं शिशुरस्मि गुरोः मतिरस्ति गुरो मम पाहि गुरो सच्चिदानन्दरूपाय विश्वोत्पत्त्यादिहेतवे तापत्रयविनाशाय श्रीकृष्णाय वयं नमः। कृष्णाय वासुदेवाय हरये परमात्मने प्रणतः क्लेशनाशाय गोविन्दाय नमो नमः। यं प्रव्रजन्तमनुपेतमपेदकृत्यं द्वैपायनो विरहकातर आजुहाव पुत्रेति तन्मयतया तरवोऽभिनेदुस्तं सर्वभूतहृदयं मुनिमानतोऽस्मि। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। सर्वेभ्यः नमस्कारः. We are seeing the Kapilopadesha, which is the Upadesha of Kapila Muni to his mother Devahuti, which comes in the third canto of Srimad Bhagavata Mahapurana. Kapila Bhagavan explained about the Purusha, Prakriti, the evolutes of Prakriti, the concept of Jiva, the bondage and the liberation of Jiva. Hearing all this, his mother Devahuti, she was much concerned that how can the Jiva be ever liberated from the bondage of Prakriti? The Prakriti holds the Purusha in bondage, and this connection or this bondage is eternal. Then how can this Jiva, that is the Purusha existing in Prakriti, can ever be liberated from the clutches of this Prakriti? She was concerned about it, and she asked his son Kapila Muni about this. Kapila Bhagavan said, Amma, there are so many ways for this bondage to be destroyed or to be dissolved, and very important among all this is the sadhana practice. Spiritual practices help the bondage to be destroyed, and that will destroy the body and mind itself. Of course, the body will fall off and it will dissolve the mind and the subtle body itself. That much power the spiritual practices have, Amma. So don't be worried. And he said, and he explained that how these spiritual practices have to be practiced. All these spiritual sadhanas have to be practiced. Kapila Muni said, for this, first this mind has to be pure. By using this mind and this body, existing in this body itself, we can destroy this bondage. It is just like with the help of the fuel, we lit the lamp or we lit the fire, and that fire itself, after some time, it consumes the fuel itself. So just like that, we can use this body and mind to destroy this body and mind and liberate the jiva. After that, the jiva will not take any rebirth, he said. And he said about how the mind has to be pure for all these spiritual practices. And he gave many advices and many ways to purify the mind. So first, the mind has to be purified. The first thing is the mind must be free of any ill thoughts, that is, negative thoughts. To think negative about someone, to think negative about ourselves even. So all these negative, discouraging thoughts must be let off. Only then the mind gets that texture to purify itself. So one must be free of all types of negative thoughts. Then the next thing is one must hear, read, and listen to the scriptures, because the scriptures explain this concept of Jiva and Purusha, any scriptures it may be, and it also describes about the Leelas of Bhagavan, whatever scripture it may be, the glories of Bhagavan. So we can understand who Bhagavan is, and we can develop that intense love towards Bhagavan. So this must be practiced by the mind. Then the mind must not have any selfish motives. When we worship Bhagavan, that prayer should be without any selfish motive, or otherwise we will develop that ego, sense of ego. Then the mind cannot be free, because it is the ego sense that holds on the Prakriti to the Purusha. It is that ego that holds on this bondage. So, to dissolve or destroy this ego sense, we have to practice bhakti or practice all the spiritual sadhanas without the sense of ego. So, that is very important. We must be free of this selfishness, and we must have the interest for seeking knowledge. If there is no basic interest in us, then all this will not please us. We feel that what is all the necessary for all this in this busy life? So we must have that basic interest of to liberate the jiva. For the liberation of the jiva means we must have that basic interest to seek knowledge, and one must have this passion towards this materialistic world by understanding the fleeting and temporary nature of this materialistic world. One should not force this passion or force spirituality in a person. It will not work. One must have the natural interest for spirituality, and one must, by that natural interest, one must seek for knowledge, and one must have the dispassion towards the materialistic world by understanding the fleeting nature of the materialistic world, and it should not be forced. So that one has to practice. And Bhagavan also said that that person must understand who he is and be free from this sense of ego, and he must speak, eat, and sleep in a moderately. He should not be awake all the time. He should not always sleep. Then the mind will become dull. And he should not be always awake and doing spiritual practices or reading scriptures also, because the mind again will be tired. So that initial stages we must have moderate sleep and moderate food, that you must eat moderately. Too much of food make the mind and brain dull, and if we starve, that also make the mind and body everything dull, and we will have that lethargy. So that must be, food must be moderate, or that we must eat moderately. And what is more important is we must speak moderately. We should not always be dumb and in a remorse mode, so that everything around us we will see only negativity in that mood. And we should not be also a talkative person, because when we talk too much, that's a waste of energy, and we will not have reserve the energy for spiritual practices, and also that it will lead us into many problems. So we must eat, sleep, and speak moderately, and we must meditate on the form of Bhagavan. Only then we will be able to come over the body mind consciousness. We must sit in a clean place, in a recently calm place, because in the beginning stages itself, when we go to a solitary place to practice meditation, and if the meditation is not did not come to us, then we feel so lonely and dejected. So in the initial period, on the beginning stage, we must practice meditation at home only, but in a reasonably calm place. So we must sit in a clean place, or otherwise the surroundings will disturb us, and we must practice meditation. We must try to fix the our mind on the form of Bhagavan. When we practice this meditation, our mind will go to the external world. So again, with the patience, we have to bring it back. We need not be disappointed or dejected by it. We have to bring it back again and practice the meditating on the form of Bhagavan in the initial stages. So when we concentrate internally, that is called the dharana. That in the yogic steps, it is called the dharana. Dharana means fixing the mind on something. That is the form of Bhagavan. But what happens by this dharana is many of our sinful tendencies will be dissolved by this dharana. The next practice is the higher stage is the dhyana. Dhyana is the continuous flow of one thought. When we meditate on the form of Bhagavan, continuously we must try to practice it. We must begin with it for 1 minute, then increase it for 3 minutes, 5, 10, half an hour. Like that, we have to increase the duration of fixing our mind on the form of Bhagavan. This is dhyana. And next to dhyana is a samadhi, which is a very supreme state. Initially, in the initial stages, to bring the mind to control, we can practice pranayama. So by pranayama, we can control the mind. We have to take the breath in and keep the breath for some time and then again release it, again repeat the same thing. So this will help, practice of pranayama will help to control our mind to an extent. So we have to practice all this, and by dharana, many of our sinful tendencies will be erased, and by dhyana, we rise above the body mind consciousness. So when we concentrate on the form of Bhagavan, when we keep our mind fixed on it, after some time we go about this body and mind consciousness. So we can have that glimpse of Bhagavan, the glimpse of that pure jiva. Once when the jiva get the hold of this, then it will consider the body and mind as external to it. And whatever comes to the body and mind, it is not concerned by it. Just like how the great jnanis feel, just like Ramana Maharshi or Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. Whatever came to the body and mind, they are not concerned about it because they know that they are the Atma, they are the Jiva. This Purusha existing in this Prakriti and all this body and mind, all these are impressions, but the body and mind will be there till the prarabdha karmas are exhausted. Once when it is exhausted, the body falls on. If we have not enough practice, then the subtle body will exist. But by practice of dhyana and all these spiritual practices, when the jiva understands its supreme nature, then after the death, this subtle body also will be destroyed and there will be no rebirth for that bhakta. Till the subtle body is attached to this jiva, that is the mind is attached to the jiva has to take repeated rebirths to satisfy the impressions in the mind or to give expressions to the impressions in the mind. So once when by dhyana or by higher spiritual practices, when the jiva understands that it is the Purusha, then it will realize that all this sukha, dukkha, pain, everything is only for the body and mind and it is not for the jiva. So it will remain in that blissful state always. That's how sometimes we see many of the rishis being in that peaceful state always, blissful state always. Now, Kapila Muni explains to his mother how to meditate on the form of Bhagavan. First, we have to imagine the whole form of Bhagavan. Then, meditate on his Keshadi Padarupa, that is from his head till the feet. We must imagine Bhagavan in our mind with that beautifully decorated golden diadem and his Nama on his forehead, his beautiful face, just like the lotus flower, then his beautiful lotus petal shaped eyes, that very calm look towards us, and his sharp nostrils, and his very shiny cheeks, which can reflect the earrings, that is the Maharakuntala on his cheeks. So polished or and so perfect without any blemishes is his beautiful face. Then his mandahasa, that is a soft smile. Bhagavan doesn't laugh like how we laugh when we see some picture or movie, sahaha. No, he just gives the mandahasa. And his beautiful crimson red color shaped colored lips, and his beautiful pearl like teeth, and his beautiful face, always peaceful and always calm. When we see his face, especially when we notice his eyes, it gives peace for our mind itself. So peaceful is his beautiful face. Bhagavan is a quintessence of beauty, and then comes to we have to bring our concentration to the neck portion. It is just like in the shape of conch, and that neck and the chest region is decorated with so many ornaments, tulsi mala, the kaustubamani, and the vanamala, which is made of five different types of flowers. And his arms, it is decorated with the armlets, very beautiful armlets. Then his abdomen, which is the seat of this entire creation, and he is wearing that yellow color silk robe, and that robe is held tight and in position by the beautiful golden girdle decorated with many gems, and his beautiful legs, that thigh portion, the knee portion, it is so beautiful, and his feet, which gives Sharanagati for all the bhaktas. When we meditate on the feet of Bhagavan, all that silly fears will be erased from our mind. And again, we have to repeat this meditation now from the Padadi Kesha. From the feet, we have to bring our concentration, our mind to the leg portion, his beautiful yellow color robe, held tight with that beautifully decorated girdle, his abdomen, which is the seat of this entire creation, his chest portion, which has the Kaustubamani, Vanamala, Tulasi Mala, and it is the seat of Devi Lakshmi, Srivatsa mark on his chest, and his arms are decorated by the armlets, and his conch shaped neck, his beautiful smile, the calm face, it is just like lotus. His eyes gives that expression of a peace, and it is so beautiful, long, beautiful eyes. It attracts us when we think about the eyes of Bhagavan. It just draws us in, and his nama mark on his forehead, and his head with beautiful curly hair, and it is decorated with a beautiful diadem. So this form we have to imagine, and he is holding the conch in one hand, chakra in the other hand, having the Padma in one hand and his mace in another hand, which gives us confidence that he will protect us. And this form of Bhagavan must be registered in our mind. After meditating on the entire form of Bhagavan, and Kapila Muni says we have to meditate on each part of Bhagavan, just like meditating on the eyes of Bhagavan. As I said, when we meditate on the eyes of Bhagavan, it gives peacefulness for our mind. And his Kaustubamani, Sri Lakshmi residing in his chest, Srivatsa mark, and his beautiful smile. Kapila Muni says when we meditate on the face of Bhagavan or the feet of Bhagavan, we have to fix our mind for a long time on that. Then it gives peace of mind for us. In whatever problem we may be in, this meditation will give us peace of mind. So, like this, we have to meditate, and for this meditation to happen, our mind has to be reasonably pure. Reasonably pure without any negative impressions, without any fear. He will realize that this body and mind are external to him, and just as when we see a very horrible dream, and when we wake up from that dream, we realize that all that dream is just Maya, and I am not that. In any way, I am not connected with that dream. Just like that, when we meditate on this form of Bhagavan, that Bhakta realizes that he is that pure Jiva, and this body and mind are external to him, and it is connected with him by this ego that he will understand. And he will also understand that I am that Brahman. I am not this body or mind. I am that Brahman, or I am that Purusha, or I am that Atma, or I am that Supreme Being existing in Prakriti to help Prakriti. And he will realize that Sarva Bhudeshu Chatmanam. I am that Atma, same Atma, existing in all beings, Sarva Bhudeshu, in all beings. Sarva Bhudani cha Atmani, and all the beings also reside in me. This feeling will come to him. So, by that, his individuality is completely dissolved. That is, his ego is dissolved by bhakti. It is at this juncture, this is the pinnacle of bhakti. And at this juncture, he gets jnana. That is, at this point, bhakti turns into jnana. So that here he will realize Amma. Bhagavan Kapila Muni tells to his mother Devahuti, and Bhagavan says that bhakti is the same. The feeling one get by bhakti and the knowledge one receive by bhakti is same. But the bhaktas are different. They have to upgrade themselves step by step. The different bhaktas, that is, the bhaktas are different based, and their bhakti is based on their guna, because based on their guna is a person's tendency, attitude, everything is based on the guna. So each person has different gunas. Some have more sattvika guna, some have more tamasika guna, some middle of this, some have rajasika guna. So bhakti also is based on it, and we consider Bhagavan based on our guna. All will not consider Bhagavan as same. Each one see Bhagavan in different ways. And Kapila Muni says that a man dominated by Tamoguna imagine me or consider me as a cruel person just like him, and he uses me just like a gunda to take revenge on his enemies and all that, and he will give me, that is as Naivedya, he will give me blood and flesh and all that. So many tribal gods and tribal people we have seen, and even in villages also it's a practice now. So the people who have tamoguna, they consider me as cruel person, and they behave with me, or they consider me just like that. They consider me, or they think that I am different from them. And a person dominated by the rajoguna, he will use me, or he will think that I will satisfy all his materialistic desires, and will help him to satisfy all the desires to attain siddhis for him. So just like that he thinks, and he also think that I am different from them, and I am somewhere in the temple or in any other place. So these Rajasika people are also use me for the materialistic benefits. Sattvica minded people, the people who have Sattvica guna, Sattva guna, what they do is they approach me to attain liberation. They too think that I am different from them, and they approach me to attain liberation. So they all have their own agenda, and to satisfy their agenda, they approach me because they consider me that I am different from them. Bhagavan says that, but a true bhakta, he will worship me without any motivation, unlimited bhakti. He doesn't want anything from me. And Bhagavan very beautifully says, Salokya sarshti samipya sarupyaigatvam दीयमानं न गृह्णन्ति विना मत्सेवनं जनाः. Such bhaktas, they do not even accept, or they do not want salokya, that is to be in the same realm as me, where I live, that is in Vaikunta, or in the same realm where Bhagavan lives. They do not even want that, they do not accept it. Sarshti, that is having my own powers, just like all the siddhis I have, they do not want all those siddhis. Samipya, they do not want to be always near me. And Sarupya, to have the same rupa like me, that also they do not accept. And Sayuja, to be with me always, to merge in me, that is, they do not even want mukti. What do they want then? They want an opportunity to serve me, just like Bhakta Hanuman. These bhaktas, they always wanted to serve me, to be pleased with me, to pray me, worship me, to be in that feeling itself. That itself is enough for them. They do not even need mukti. Bhagavan says, Sayeva bhakti yogakya आत्यन्तिक उदाहृदः येनादिव्रज्य त्रिगुणं madbhavayovapathyade. Such is the greatness and the glory of this supreme state of bhakti. They love this bhakti. They want this feeling and not anything else. By that means itself, the jiva overcomes the three gunas and they are fit for that divine state. Even though they do not want all this, they do not want this sayuja, samipya, all that thing. Not for that they worship me. For the sake of bhakti, for that feeling of bhakti, they worship me, but automatically they will get all that, he says. And Bhagavan now in the next shlokas tells about the nature of bhakti. This bhakti, what is this bhakti? He says that it is the bhakti has to be, he is telling about the lakshana of bhakti. Lakshanam bhakti yogasya nirgunasya hyudahrudam ahaiduhyavyavahita ya bhakti Purushottame. Ahayituhi bhakti, unmotivated, without any desire. We all have that desire and worship Bhagavan, conditional bhakti, but the true bhaktas, they will not have any desire, unconditional bhakti. Avyavahita, unrestricted, it will overcome all obstacles, just like how Bhakta Meera had for Bhagavan. So it will overcome all the obstacles. When we do anything good itself, we have to face many obstacles. For materialistic life itself, like that. So when we practice bhakti, there will be many obstacles and restrictions. So one has to overcome it. Only then the bhakti will cross all barriers and it will reach Bhagavan. So like that, the bhakti has to overcome all the restrictions. For that, the mind has to be again pure. The mind must be given importance for all these spiritual practices. And to attain this state of bhakti, Bhagavan says, one should do all the duties without any motive or without any expectation of result. Bhagavan says that one should not ignore the duties and follow bhakti. We have to perform our daily duties, and in that middle of that we have to practice bhakti. So without any of attachment while performing the duty, just that is karma yoga, we have to offer everything to Bhagavan. See, everything is Narayana Arpanam. So, like that, we have to do. And we must worship Bhagavan with the Vedic rituals. I think all these are easy. And the next point, what Bhagavan is going to tell, is very difficult because we should not injure any fellow being. Vacha karmana smarana. We should not injure any being, insult or injure any being by the words, by our actions, and even by our thought. So this is very important because only then our egoistic sense, that is ego sense of ahankara, that will be dissolved. And only then that ahankara is dissolved, we can merge in Bhagavan. The ultimate end of bhakti is to merge in Bhagavan. So when we have that egoistic feeling with us, then it will not help us to merge in Bhagavan. So one must not injure any creature by words or thoughts or by action. And the image or the vigraha of Bhagavan should be worshipped in the initial stages with prayers, shlokas, and nama sankirtanam, all that we can do. And what is more important is we must have that dispassion towards the materialistic objects. As I said, we must not force dispassion towards materialistic objects, because when we force it, uh, drag the mind from it, then the mind after some time naturally goes towards it. So we must educate the mind about the temporary nature of all this, and in that way bring dispassion towards the worldly objects and the world. We must have the fellow sympathy, kindness to the other men or creatures in distress. When another person or any other being suffers, we have to help them or have sympathy towards them at least. And we must respect everyone equally, because in everyone Bhagavan resides. We must respect everyone equally. We must regularly hear the scriptures, hear it, study it, listen to it, everything. And the leelas of the Bhagavan should be heard. Only then we will develop that intense love towards Bhagavan. Straightforwardness, because only when we have that fear, we tell lies and we take all that crooked way. When we do not fear for anything, when we have that strong conviction that Bhagavan is with us, then we have naturally straightforwardness will come to us. So we have to be a straightforward person without any selfish attitude. So all this has to be practiced, and the company of the holy men should be sought after, because we can see the live example in the holy men, the way they live, the way they practice the spiritual sadhanas, all that we can live performance of how these spiritual practices, how they tackle the problem, how do they remain calm when any problem arises, are they disappointed or in distress, how they tackle these problems. So like that, the holy men are the great example for this world. And what is more important is Bhagavan says that one must recognize the presence of me in all beings and in himself. This is the pinnacle of bhakti. We must realize that Bhagavan is in us and in all the other beings, the fellow beings also. It may be an ant, or it may be a sinner, a criminal, or a divine person, holy person. He is there. The person who is a sinner or a criminal, he is his nature, that is his real nature, is covered by ignorance, layers and layers and layers of ignorance. That doesn't mean that Bhagavan is not in him. But in a holy person, the ignorance is not there. So that prakasa of Bhagavan is more clear. It is just like the sun reflecting on the muddy water and the clear water. But the reflection will be there. So that we have that maturity a bhakta, true bhakta must bring out. And Bhagavan, in this next few slokas, he very beautifully explained who he is. and how to worship him also. Aham sarveshu bhuteshu bhudatmavastita sada tamavajñāya mamartyah kurutircha vidambanam. Bhagavan says, Aham sarveshu bhuteshu, in all beings, bhudatma avastidah sada, as the antaratma, I reside in all beings sada, always. Not only while doing puja or not only in some occasion, he remains as the antaratma of all beings sada, always. Tama avajñāya mam martyaha, man, avajñāya, ignoring me, disrespecting me, kurude, do, archa vidambanam, he worship my vigraha. So, ignoring or not recognizing or disrespecting my presence in all beings, he is doing puja for the vigraha. Bhagavan is much concerned about it. And he again says, Yo mam sarveshu bhudeshu santamatmanamishwaram hitvarcha bhajate maudayat basmanye vajjuhoti saha. He says that if one disregard my presence in sarva bhudeshu, in all beings, and ignorantly offer worship only to the images or to the vigraha, such worship is just like giving ahuti to the ashes. It will be of no use. We have to give ahuti to the agni, fire. But if we give ahuti to the ashes, what is the use of it? Can that ritual be perfect? Or will we get any result for it? No. So, ignoring the presence of Bhagavan in all beings and doing puja for the vigraha alone or for the image and worshipping the image alone, it will be of no use, says Kapila Bhagavan in his Kapilopadesha. Again he says, Dvishadav parakaye mam manino bhinna darshinaha bhudeshu baddha vairasya namana shanti mrichati. A man who persecutes me, residing in all the beings, who is very proud and who looks upon God as another being, residing only in the images and form or in the vigraha, such a person, na manashanti mrichati, such a person will never attain peace of mind. This we very commonly see, isn't it, when we go to temples, especially to the temples there where there are long queues to see the Bhagavan. The bhaktas itself insult one another to jump the queue. And what is more worse is the pujari itself, the one who does puja to the vigraha, they themselves have preferences for the bhaktas. They have preferences for the temple authorities, for the rich men in the society, for their own family members, or for the people who visit the temples often. So they have preferences. Is it not? Have we not seen? So all that puja Bhagavan will not accept. That says Kapila Bhagavan in his Kapilopadesha. So the presence of Bhagavan must be recognized in all beings. Instead of worshipping the images of Bhagavan, the vigraha of Bhagavan, this thought has to come to us first. And again he says, Ahamucchavachayir dravyai kriyayotpannayanake naiva tushyerchitorchayam bhudagramaavamaninaha. If a man disregards and persecutes the fellow beings, but worship me only in the images with numerous rituals, rich offerings. I am not pleased with him at all. Net tushyeva, I will not be pleased with him at all, he says. So the next time when we go to the temple or when we worship Bhagavan, this thought must come to us. First, we have to recognize his presence in all beings, respect that person, and respect the Bhagavan in him. And after that, only if we do the puja to Bhagavan, he will accept this. These are the words of Bhagavan Kapila in his Kapilopatesha to his mother Devahuti. And so, is there no use worshipping the Vigraha of Bhagavan? For that, Bhagavan says, Archadavarchaye tavadhishwaram mam swakarma krit yavanna veda swahridi sarvabhudeshwavastitam. He says that I reside in all beings, and one who do not recognize my presence in him and in all. So till that knowledge comes to him, he can do worship to my vigraha or my image. So there is use, but as I said, we have to upgrade our bhakti. Bhagavan is there in the vigraha, there in the images in our puja room, in the slokas we say, everywhere Bhagavan is there. But realizing Bhagavan in oneself and in others, that is the pinnacle of bhakti, and it at this point the bhakti turns into jnana. So Bhagavan has only likes this. So till that we can practice bhakti by worshipping the vigraha of Bhagavan. It's just like going to a research, PhD or all that, but we cannot go there directly. So we have to pass all those schools, secondary and primary college educations to reach that research. So just like that, it, we can for temporarily we can worship Bhagavan in the vigraha, but that is not the ultimate. Bhagavan prefers uh, him to be worshipped in the way we worship him in all beings and in oneself also. To recognize his presence in oneself and in all beings. That is the way Bhagavan prefers to be worshipped. Bhagavan says that till he recognizes my presence in himself and in all beings, that is Sarva Bhudeshu, he will have that fear of death. And the fear of death and that misery will haunt him. He says that. And he tells about the concept of time, the spiritual evolution of all the beings, and it goes on. And I will continue that in my next upload. श्रीनारायणाखिलगुरो भगवन्नमस्ते ॐ श्रीकृष्णार्पणमस्तु